should approve the minutes from that last meeting. Need a motion.
We should also appoint an acting chair first.
All right, you have to appoint me, I guess. I'll appoint somebody.
You need a motion for that?
Yeah, go
Yes.
ahead.
You need a motion for that to appoint Kevin as the acting chair?
Fine.
Yes, please.
I make a motion that we appoint Kevin as the acting chair.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now we can approve the minutes from April 27th, 2020.
I move that we accept the minutes from April 2020.
Very good. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, now we have pending decisions. I didn't see any decision from Meredith Joyce Trust. Did you send one, David?
No, I did not. If you recall, at the last meeting that was discussed, and since there was not a full board, it's discussed that that would be tabled to be discussed once a fifth board member is appointed.
All right.
But Dave, I saw 3 pending decisions that you sent over email. What about those?
Correct. Just not one for Joyce. I sent over 3063 De La Quila, 3067 Southampton Real Estate Corp., and 3068 JAF 160 Ox Pasture.
So we're going to discuss these, so we're all set to approve them. Approve the-
Unless you have changes to what I wrote, then it's up to you.
I read them. I was fine with them.
John Bennett is also here. His hand went down, but I just wanted to let you know he's in attendance.
Thank you.
And his hand is up, so I think he wants to speak, you guys, but you let me know when.
Well, can we take care of the 3 decisions first?
Whatever you want.
Then we'll get to John Bennett. Let's get this out of the way. On 3063, Richard De La Quila, 227 Halsey Street.
I move that we accept this decision as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
On 3067, Southampton Real Estate Corp., 80 White Street.
I move we accept this decision as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3068, JAF 160 Ox Pasture Holdings, 160 Ox Pasture Road.
I move we accept this decision as written.
Do I have a
I'll
second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now,
Aye.
what's John Bennett want to say?
I believe he's probably looking to speak on Joyce, on the Joyce Trust matter. I know he submitted an additional letter to the record.
Would you like me to let him in?
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Yeah. Okay, the first thing I want, hello? Can everyone hear me?
We
We
can
hear you. We can't see you, but we hear you.
Okay, well, the first thing I want to let you guys know is that you're conducting these meetings as webinars, and you're not supposed to. They're supposed to be conducted as regular Zoom meetings, not webinars. So I really wish you would take steps to stop that, because every other board that I've appeared before is conducted as a regular Zoom meeting. Don't worry, I will be very respectful in terms of when to speak, particularly at a work session, because I know that it's been the policy of the village for forever not to let people speak at a work session unless they ask and request politely and are allowed to talk. I never used to attend work sessions. It's too bad that they've now become attended by people. I thought it was a lot more capable. You guys were a lot more capable of getting work done. But in any event, I don't think you are supposed to, under the executive order, conduct these things as webinars. They're supposed to be conducted as regular Zoom meetings. So I would ask you to look into that. That's every other board that I've appeared before. They've been regular Zoom meetings. I just wanted to talk about Meredith. Go ahead.
Tell me the difference.
Well, there's a significant difference. There's a list of participants. I can have audio and visual. I can unmute myself and mute myself. All the other participants are arrayed on the side. I don't have any of that stuff. It's like a much more restrictive meeting. These are not webinars. Webinars are seminars. These aren't seminars. These are public meetings. But having said all of that, I just wanted to reiterate on Meredith Joyce Trust that I would like a decision held open until I have a full board.
Well, do you think that's fair to the new member that comes on? Who hasn't heard it?
I'm entitled to it though, Kevin. I'm entitled to a vote of the full board.
Full board now is 4 members.
No, a full board as a full 5-member board.
All right, so then that member will come on,
Okay.
not knowing the history of this, not knowing a thing really, and you're gonna put the pressure on him or her to vote yes or no.
Well, many times people have, I'm sorry, many times people have, that board member is just going to have to familiarize themselves with the rather long and extensive history of this 7-year attempt to do something, which I thought we had all taken care of. We had the Architectural Review Board in agreement. We had an agreement with the prior village attorney's office to settle this in this matter and withdraw the litigation. Now it seems we're surprisingly to the members of the Architectural Review Board and the counsel in the litigation, the appointed counsel in litigation, very surprisingly at a deadlock in the Zoning Board of Appeals, to everyone's surprise. So it's not my doing.
Well, to begin with, a legal meeting is only 3 members. We have 4.
Yes, that's right.
Legal meeting.
A 3-member quorum, but under the law, I'm entitled to a vote of the full board.
Well, the full board right now is 4 members.
No, a full board, a full 5-member board, Kevin.
You don't have a full 5-member board.
I know, so I guess it's just going to have to get kicked over until you have a 5-member board.
Well, that may be a while, seeing as the ARB is down to 3 right now.
I understand. I understand, and I'm not trying to be a stick in the mud, but I haven't created this deadlock situation.
Is it possible, Mr. Bennett, for you to put the video on so that we could see you as well? It would
I've
be
been
much
trying.
easier.
I've been. That's the problem. This is the first time that I haven't been able on any of these Zoom meetings to have full video, full audio, list of participants, everybody on the screen. It must be because you're conducting them as webinars, and they're not webinars.
I'm finding out. If you could give me 1 second.
Like I said, the 427 meeting, we had video and audio from you, and I don't know if the format had changed since then or not.
I don't know, David. I don't
Yeah.
know. I clicked the link the same as I did before, and you're absolutely correct. At the 427 meeting, I had video and audio.
So, John, you would like to hold this case open until there's a 5th member, not have us vote on it?
You already announced how pretty much you were going to vote. Dan, you and Kevin were going to be a yes, and Mark and Julia were going to be a no, which is that's a 0 vote. I mean, that's a denial. So I'm entitled to a full board.
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt. I would not normally do that, but John, I actually can get John to video. I made an error. Let me hold on 1 second, and I can get him on. Okay, John, you should be able to now.
Yeah, John, you're muted as from what I'm seeing.
Okay. All right. That's
There we
better.
go. Okay.
Mhm.
Sorry
Okay.
about that, guys.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you. I know it's hard for everyone to adapt to this stuff. So
You're welcome.
thank you.
Thank you, John,
Yep.
for your patience.
So, I mean, I had a conversation with counsel for the Architectural Review Board about this, the appointed counsel and the litigation before the Architectural Review Board, who told me that he was shocked, couldn't understand why there wasn't just an approval by the Zoning Board of Appeals. This is what everyone had pretty much agreed to, is how to settle all these things. The Architectural Review Board is supportive of it. You know, this is getting rid of, you know, quite a bit of administrative time, energy, and effort, and getting rid of a litigation. You know, a judge may very well say we can take them both down. We took one of them down, take the other one down. We're giving up the opportunity for a judge to say take the other house down. We have been in this process for so long that our as of right square footage has dropped from 6,349 to 4,139.
That's under the
I
old.
didn't hear anything at the meeting from any neighbors, or quite candidly from Mark or Julia, that would suggest that there's any impact on the neighborhood, period.
Mr. Bennett, what are you asking of us tonight?
I'm
Because
asking
this
you,
was a pending decision. You've said that you don't want us to take the vote. So what is happening now? What is
I'm
it that you're
trying-
expecting from us tonight?
well, you're not supposed to do my client out of the opportunity to have a vote by a full 5-member board. So I'm asking you to adjourn it, but I'm also trying to respond
Okay.
to some questions that Mr. Greider and Mr. Guzowitz asked me.
And those were also addressing were they addressing your March letter, your March 11th letter, John?
Yes, they were, but since that's March letter, I've had a conversation with counsel for the Architectural Review Board, and I ask you to speak to him yourself, who is
Sure, no
very
problem.
surprised that there was any resistance to this in the Zoning Board of Appeals.
I'm a little surprised, John, that people were shocked and surprised that we had a 2-2 vote. How do they know who's going to vote?
Well, ultimately, that's
Who was
true.
shocked? Who was shocked by the 2-2 vote?
Mr. Robinson, call him up and ask him.
Who's Mr. Robinson?
Oh, he's still counsel of record he's the counsel of a record appointed in the
Why was he shocked?
litigation.
Why was he shocked? We haven't talked to him in months and months and months.
Maybe he was shocked because, as you and Dan recognized, Kevin, this is a very reasonable way out of this whole thing with no impact on the character of the neighborhood.
You may recall, John, at the very beginning, I was against this. I only changed because of the hang-up that I didn't think was your fault.
I'm sorry, Kevin, you didn't think?
I didn't think the hang-up all these years gone by was your fault.
Well, it wasn't.
It wasn't your fault.
No.
Otherwise, I would not have changed my vote.
Yeah, no, remember, it took us years to convince the Architectural Review Board that the easterly property didn't even merit preservation. That took forever. And through all of this stuff, I thought you and Dan were very reasonable in recognizing the fact that none of this was self-created on our part. The Joyces had owned the property since, before the historic district, well before any of these square footage limitations. We're asking for something that's consistent with the character of the neighborhood. If we had our druthers, we'd take that house down. It'd be more expensive, as Dan recognized, to rebuild it. But we're willing to, this is a compromise. And I heard absolutely nothing in the record that suggested that there would be any impact on the character of the neighborhood, which is critical. The only neighbors that have submitted anything have been McLaughlin to the west, and then, forgive me, I forget their names, to the north and northeast, which were supportive of the application. So where's the basis for denial? You can't deny something just because you don't like it. You have to go through the analysis.
That's the basis for the denial. It's over the zoning limit.
Well, Kevin, every application that's before you in the Zoning Board of Appeals is somehow doesn't conform with the zoning. You have to take into account character of the neighborhood, how the issue arose, whether or not there's any fault, all of that stuff. That's all I'm asking you to do.
This is what? How many square feet over is this? About 1,000 square feet?
A little bit shy. A little bit shy. 139, about high 800s.
I mean, it's hard to understand. I can see why there's a no vote on this. It's hard to understand why people can't be happy with a 4,000 square foot house instead of a 4,500 square foot house, or whatever it's supposed to be. Seeing as they're getting the square footage in this guest cottage.
Getting the square foot, I'm sorry, Kevin, getting the square footage, excuse me?
The guest cottage, they're getting that.
Yeah, but you know, as Dan recognized, I mean, that's not this is a real compromise. This is the guest cottage is going to be 20 feet from the road. It's hardly going to be great square footage. The typical guest cottage is pushed to the back of the property. Indeed, even the town legislation where, just by analogy, where they allow you a carriage house, you have to put it in the back. This is hardly a huge benefit. This is part of a compromise.
But aren't there other new houses surrounding this property also over 5,000 square
Yes.
feet?
Oh my God. Yes. All over the place.
So it's like, it's not out of character for the neighborhood.
Not at all. Not at all, Dan.
My understanding is the way you've asked of us is to not take a vote on this and not to take a pending decision and move it forward. Is that correct? Because we're starting all over again with this discussion. And I don't believe that was the purpose that you stated that we were here tonight. You wanted to wait till we were a 5-person board, right?
You said that before, and I said to you, I'm responding to questions from other board members. But distilled to its essence, my request is that you wait until you have a 5-member board.
Okay.
David, let me ask you this question. If we
Yes.
need to wait,
Do you need to wait? I believe so.
If not, you know,
And I believe that's also
it's
the
your
board's
call.
past
It's whatever you-
practice.
Okay.
Past what?
That's your past practice as well.
We've had lots of times when we only had 4 members on the board and we voted.
Oh, sure,
I
Kevin, but
believe
not over the objection,
When the applicant
objection
has
of the applicant.
requested a full board, I believe they're entitled to that.
I don't ever think we had an incident where we had a member missing where we had a 2-2 tie in the voting. This is, to me, I think this is a first. That part is a first.
But the 2-2 tie,
Yeah. I can never remember one, Kevin. You and I are the oldest members.
oldest, yes.
Longest serving.
Oldest serving, excuse me.
Longest serving.
The oldest too also, so,
Give yourself the benefit of the doubt there, Dan.
yeah.
You have anything
You know,
else?
I think the alternative is not the alternative to adjourning as requested by the applicant is it benefits nobody.
I'm fine with it if that's what the other board members want to do.
So,
Hey, John, I'd like to ask John a question.
Sure.
If he wants to wait till we have a 5th board member, would he want to withdraw it and then reapply so that the new board member can get up to speed on the case?
Well, there are timing issues involved, Dan. That's why I don't want to do it. The lawsuits filed within the required statute of limitations. Those withdrawal would create defenses. I
John's
have no
frozen on
problem
mine.
with representing.
Yeah, it doesn't
whenever it
benefit
comes
you
up.
or your client then? Okay.
I'm sorry, Dan.
No, that was my question, that's all. You answered
I
it.
have no problem representing when the 5th board member comes on.
you would start from scratch, you mean?
Yeah, but I can't technically withdraw it.
Right, we'd have to reopen the public hearing.
That's fine.
You want to do that now, David? You want to reopen the public hearing now?
Well, it would have to be reopened and posted and noticed. So I don't think doing it. It's up to you guys if you want to do that now or once we get another member.
Maybe we should wait till we have another member.
So how do we do this? Do we need a motion to
We can hold it open, right?
hold it
Yeah,
open?
at the request of the applicant.
Yeah, it's my request. It's
Yeah.
my request.
So that way we're not running into any statute of limitations time on decisions.
Okay.
All right, then I make a motion that we hold this case open at the applicant's request until there's a 5th board member.
Do you have a second on that?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. All right,
Thank
so
you.
It's on the agenda, but it's open. It's pending.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
John.
you.
pending cases now? We have a lot of stuff here from the Stones at 527 Meadow Lane with diagrams and pictures. This one's been around a long time.
It has. I think we all know this one. It's the one with the wall that's been in place for quite some time, and the applicant is looking to rebuild that. They were looking for the opportunity to submit additional engineering information. I've gone through most of it, and I do still have questions and found a few discrepancies in the materials that were submitted. And I was just wondering what you think might be the best way to handle that. If you would like, I can prepare a memo, which might be the most efficient way to deal with it. And that may lead to some additional information from the applicant. But there were some discrepancies, as I said, that I would like to get cleared up at least so we have a clear picture of what they're presenting. Did anyone else look at it or have any questions?
Yeah, sure. I was reading through some of this new information. It looked like they have a DEC permit now.
Yes, I believe they do.
And it had like 2 pages of a lot of conditions that the DEC put on that, but I'm still, my position is still the same. They can rebuild the wall on the upland portion, but I'm not in favor of rebuilding it in the wetlands.
Yes, that's been, I believe, I know you certainly, Dan, but the board has expressed that in the past.
So why is it still hanging around?
Well, the applicant had switched attorneys. They wanted some, I think if you remember, the neighbor to the west came in one of the meetings, and there was a lot of discussion about grading between the 2 properties. This information seems to address that, and their attorney, Gil Anderson, wanted the opportunity to present that. So that has come in. As I said, I've reviewed most of it. I mean, I'm prepared to go with your direction, but as I said, there's questions that I have that I can put in a memo if that's the most efficient, or we can discuss at the next meeting after the applicant presents their information. That's typically what we would do.
So this new information, you've looked it over. Is there anything that we should be made aware of that may change our position on or what we as board members think of this application?
I don't really see anything that would address your concerns. I mean, they're, in one respect, they're talking about clearing up the remaining portion of the wall that is still standing. And they've taken the position that that does not require a permit. I don't know if David
Chick,
is,
I'm sorry. There's a lot of feedback when you're talking. Is everybody else having that experience too?
Yeah.
Okay.
let me see if I
Could you
turn my volume down. I have no background noise whatsoever.
Yeah, it's feedback coming through your voice. It doesn't
Yeah.
sound like it's background noise. Maybe if you were even just a hair further away from it, it might help.
Okay. One of their discussions that I found interesting was they want to bolster up and re-support the portion of the wall that is still standing.
Is standing in the water or standing in the upland?
Standing closer to the bay. So it's the outlying part that was still standing, and it divides the upland portion of the Hereford property to the west from the wetlands property on 527 to the east. They've taken the position that that does not require a permit. When I review chapter 116, I think that does require a permit. And I'd like David to weigh into that just from a legal perspective. But in implementing the code for many years, I think it's hard to take that position. So I would question that. And if anything, what's being presented is more structural than what was proposed before, and I think would probably reinforce the board's concerns as you've expressed them in the past.
No, I haven't reviewed the plans in detail, but anything just short of standard minor repair of a piece here and a patch there, I tend to agree with you, Chick, that would require, anything more than that would require a permit.
So I would certainly want to question that and perhaps again at a hearing, hear from the applicant, because I would guess they'd want the opportunity to present their new information. And I can prepare a memo between now and then, if that's helpful, to draw attention to some of these concerns that I still have, as well as discrepancies and claims that I don't believe are justified.
Who would you circulate? Is that memo going to go to their attorney? Is that what you want to send them a memo?
Well, in a normal world, this would be presented at the regular meeting of the zoning board by the attorney. So
Right.
I guess we have to establish a procedure, but they submitted this information. Typically, we would hear them present that and ask questions at that time. Direct me how you would want to structure a decision.
Well, just one of those things been hanging around forever. I guess it's going to hang around a while longer. As I was reading the plan today, it looked to me that I wanted to rebuild the whole wall. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Even the part that it's already collapsed. What is the negative impact on the property if that is done? Is there? What's the impact on the property?
Did we lose
Create
Dick?
more structure in the wetlands?
We already have it there in the wetlands. We already have structure there.
Right, so they are increasing the footprint of that by this additional support system that they want to use to retain the existing wall.
Yeah, so they want to rebuild the wall in the wetlands and strengthen the wall that didn't fall over that's in the wetland.
Right.
And I'd rather not have them do anything.
That's correct.
I don't know what the other board members think, but that's,
No, I mean, Dan, to
getting
your point,
simpler, it sounds like they're making it more complicated.
I feel like we're taking a step in the wrong direction. That we were actually looking at allowing, if we could structure it that way, allowing the rebuilding of the wall upland,
Right.
and as a condition, somehow encouraging them to take down the or remove, the debris that was in the wetlands. So
That's where we were at.
and requesting a longer wall all the way into the wetlands is just surprising to me. I'm hoping somebody can explain how they're going that way.
Mark, I'm sure the applicant will get into that. From what I gather, they laid out alternatives, I think, to show the board the options. Because I believe in the conclusion, it still says that the proposed method of replacing only the collapsed section achieves the same results with less construction. So I believe they were just giving the board three alternatives to what's currently proposed to show, I guess, the different impact on the property and the neighbor's property and the wetland. So I don't believe they're actually asking for more wall. They're just showing alternatives.
No, what I'm saying is, based upon our prior meetings and our discussions, I thought we were all on the same page with the way Dan expressed it, which was, let's let them go ahead and rebuild the wall upland, the upland portion of the wall, the portion of the wall that seems to have been destroyed by recent construction on the Hereford property, which is, a good reason to support their application for rebuilding a wall that was destroyed by recent construction, but certainly not a wall that already fell down due to natural conditions.
Yeah, I agree with that, Mark. And what I would just like to add to what David said is they're not saying they're proposing to strengthen that wall as part of the permit. They're proposing it as an exempt activity. And I would want to raise question with that. And you're right, it's going in a different direction because this board has communicated your position on it to the applicant quite clearly.
Yeah, I agree.
So I guess we just have to hear them and reiterate our position.
Right?
And I think it would be helpful to have something on the record, either verbally from me or in a memo form, to review the materials that they've submitted, and re-express the position of the board through that as an environmental perspective.
So you would have a memo on this new information that they presented for our next meeting?
Yes.
I think that's a good idea.
Makes a lot of sense.
Okay,
Anything else on this? Do we have anything else on Stone?
I think that's it. There was a good package, a complete package of materials submitted that needs to be reviewed and considered. We'll hear from the applicant and I'll have a memo.
3037, I guess we're going to discuss whether we should remove this one from the agenda. Lipton Green, 270 Oxford Road. Been hanging around for a long while, and
And I thought I heard that they were re-evaluating their project. So I don't even know if it's a viable application anymore. And I agree, it's been sitting around too long, that when they're ready, they should come in and just reapply.
that makes sense. Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
I was recused from it, so I don't have any comment.
Okay. How about you, Julia?
Well, in the time that I've served on this board, it's never been discussed. It's been being passed over the whole time. So it would seem only right for it to take a walk at this point.
All right.
So do we need a motion on that, David?
we have to.
What was that?
All right.
No, you guys can remove it.
Do we have to take a vote?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I make a motion that we remove this 3037 from our agenda.
Need a second. Julie, you got a second for us?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Now, on the Community Baptist Church, seems to me I read somewhere that that's being withdrawn. Did I read that or I just imagine it?
I had not seen that.
No?
Excuse me, I do have some people that would like to speak. I have Curtis Highsmith and John Bennett. Both would like to speak.
In regard to this application?
Yes, in regards to this application.
Very good.
Okay, let me set them in. Hold on. Okay, Curtis and John, you're both in and you're all ready.
Hi, it's John.
Hello, everyone. Hi,
Hello, Curtis.
Curtis Highsmith, Southampton Housing Authority. How are you all?
We're good.
Good, Mr. Village. I certainly don't want to break any procedural precedent, but I think that this is first I was able to actually speak with you as a board as a whole over the direction of the application. And I knew that there were some questions that needed to be responded to. And I want to be here to properly respond and give you the vision and the purpose of the application. I know the major concern was with regards to the accessory apartment, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, that's right.
Okay, and is that the entire issue or concern of the board?
There was
No, David,
an entrance system. to the property.
Actually, the way, if I could, John Bennett, counsel, if I could, the way I understood the board was that they were, and I could be wrong, but I was listening pretty intently, that the primary concern was the accessory apartment over the garage. The board had gotten to a place of comfort with the other two units.
I think that's correct.
No, David, you had brought up the fact of the change of use, that the bar was very high that they had to show.
That's correct, and I believe I'd forwarded the relevant provisions from the New York State law of the criteria needed to meet a use variance, which are, like I said, higher than those for a standard area variance.
And I think that was the biggest sticking point right now.
Well, I have to express an enormous amount of frustration on this at this point, gentlemen and ladies. It has been the unaltered actions of the Town and Village Zoning Board of Appeals that when you have someone asking to create a residential use in a light industrial area or a commercial area, that is not typically viewed as a use variance. Use variants are usually almost, if you look at all the cases in litigation regarding use variances, there where somebody has been stuck in a residential zone surrounded by commercial uses, and the person is trying to get a business use. So, this was the way this entire process was agreed to by the former Zoning Board of Appeals council, recognizing, I'll give you a great example, and again, it's just by analogy, but in the town of Southampton, there are a lot of parcels that are zoned resort waterfront business, but somebody wants to go in again and put a house in one of those parcels where it's strictly speaking a prohibited use. That board has always said, look, use variances are usually where someone, almost always where someone wants to downzone a property. That's really not applicable here. So I think, in all fairness to David, he probably wasn't aware of that long line of ways in which the boards out here have dealt with applications where what somebody's asking to do is effectively not a downzoning of a property, such as going from a residential zone to a commercial use, but vice versa.
Well, a residential use on this property is actually a permitted use for a single-family residence.
I'm well aware of that, David.
So, I don't vote, and neither does the prior council. It's up to the board.
Yeah, well, I'm suggesting, as I did in the past, that maybe the board should familiarize themselves with some of the discussions that were had between the prior council and my council, myself and the applicant. That's the way we went this way. It was just specifically decided not to ask the village board to change the list of allowable uses in the light industrial zone because it was seen as unnecessarily cumbersome. And after all, you're going from a light industrial use to a residential use, albeit two families.
The other concern had to do with the entrances and the exits from the property.
Correct.
We thought there were too many.
Okay, are we referring to the residential portion of it or the parking lot?
Well, it's all one. It goes into the parking lot and it goes on to the resident. Like if there was an entrance to the garage, there were two entrances onto the house, I believe. I mean, three. That street there, is not Powell Street, but the other one is extremely crowded. Always
Okay.
backed up.
Well, actually, the design was done in a manner that it wouldn't be crowded. We took a lot of, obviously, taking in light of my previous position, we took a lot of time to consider the impact, both from street, for the community, and for the inhabitants of the residents. One of the main concerns was to make sure that the parking lot had one direction of traffic going from one direction to the other. There would not be a two-way flow. That would minimize activity coming onto the main road, and will carry all of the activity, especially specifically members coming out of the church, onto the side road. The bulk of the residential house parking was on the side road. That would be the main unit on the first floor and the second unit on the second floor for the two-family. We pushed that off to the side so that it would not have a visual impact to the streetscape. But one of the things that we carried into this particular application was also the mission and the goal that the town as a whole has been trying to accomplish, and that's the establishment of accessory apartments as a means for affordable housing. Not everyone needs a 3-bedroom, not everyone needs a 2-bedroom. There are those the police professionals, the first responders that only need a single unit. And it would be best for them to be in a controlled environment, safe and sound, rather than what some have been doing over the past many years, and that's illegal apartments. So we were trying to create on the accessory apartment would have its own entryway and garage. And the goal in that is that most people who have garage access would also park in the garage. So the individual that will be living in the accessory apartment above garage would probably 90% of the time have their vehicle inside of the garage. So that's kind of the volume, the psychiatry, the vision that we were looking at in terms of our agency to ensure that there wasn't going to be a lot of trafficking coming onto the major highway, but most of it would be set off on the side road.
If this goes forward, I thought that the one-car garage with the studio apartment was just sort of like this tall, skinny, separate building on the property, and that why don't they just attach that, make it like a 1.5 garage with an apartment above it to that side of the house? It would be a much more attractive building, and it wouldn't chew up all of the yard.
Well, 2 reasons. One, I did not want to increase the envelope of the main structure. That's the reason why it was designed, that the house will maintain its current, within a few square feet of the current footprint. And the addition of the accessory apartment would be detached. Second, we find that most individuals would not like to share walls with two other families. So the accessory apartment being separate, which probably would be a younger person. Young people do young things, and therefore sometimes that mixture of family and having that single family or single person in the apartment is a better fit. It would just be, like I say, young people, they travel, they come in and out of the house on later hours. We just wanted to make sure that everyone lived in harmony on the parcel.
I guess
and this is the design we did also in Sag Harbor, where we built the very first detached accessory apartment. And this was the model, because we basically we worked within the envelope of the building of a home, whether it be a basement, whether it be a separate room. We've worked with that model before, but the model separating it and having individuals have their own separate space, not sharing walls, and having a more harmonious relationship on property, it just seems to fit better.
So Curtis, what's the intention, that these are all rental units? You have 3 separate rentals?
Yes, the housing authorities through my leadership, we worked through and we finished and completed Daily Road, which was the first 3 single-family home ownership projects. This is the first rental. We're trying to do this in phases, but Instead of coming in as we have in the past in another project like Sandy Hollow and Speonk and looking for large density projects, we're trying to show that if we can have scattered sites throughout Southampton where we provide this without fully impacting the environment, the community, the neighborhood, we can do this in Southampton Village, and we can do quite a few of these in Southampton Village, and no one would ever know that they were affordable units. But
So
more importantly, it gives me oversight, because this program has to be successful. That means the grass is going to be kept because I'm making sure it's done. The garbage is going to be maintained because I have the oversight. I do annual inspections on all of our units. You have someone who is vested in ensuring that the process is going on. It's not something that are a absentee landlord who's not visible in the community. It's a person, an agency who's a part of the community to ensure that it's running and not only efficiently, but it's running and corresponding with the entire community and neighborhood.
I'm all in favor of the 2-family house. I think the garage apartment is just too much. It's overkill.
Just to let you know that the genesis of this application, when we originally talked over this application and before we actually made a commitment to go forward with it, we sat down with the trustees. Now, yes, the bodies in the seat are different now. But at that time, the trustees were pushing our agency to do 3-family with accessory apartments. And we said no. We did not want to set that type of, especially specifically on the first project, that type of precedent where we're trying to do the maximum that could possibly be done on a parcel or piece of land. We feel a 1-bedroom unit is not overly developing. It's an individual. It's a person who, quite frankly, we need a lot more of. We just have not been able to find the opportunities to do this.
Kevin,
Curtis,
I'm sorry. Kevin, would you be willing to consider if that unit, as Dan said, was integrated into like one structure?
And I think you could still design it that way where there's not walls against walls.
Say again? I'm sorry, Dan.
Says I think you could attach that garage, it could be a 1.5 car garage, a little larger, and do it so that there's not walls against walls.
Curtis, can we look at that? I mean, or Kevin, do you think you still don't like the density?
I don't like the density. I think 2 there is fine, 3 is too much.
So you're looking at 3 units. One of those units is 1 person. It's 1 extra person. It's not, we're not talking about 3-family home. It's a 2-family home with a single individual. But absolutely, we would look into, and if you feel that that is a better design where we integrate the garage into the house, absolutely. You know, we'll go back to the drawing board and come up with a design that's favorable. What I don't want is I don't want a tower just sitting on the side of the house, almost secondary. But we can, I'm sure that there's a way that we can design it in a manner that it that
architecturally would work.
Well, I guess it would be interesting to see how Mark and Julia feel about that concept before we go down that road.
Curtis, can I ask you just a couple of questions? Who will own the property? Who will rent out the units?
The Southampton Housing Authority.
And then what is the I guess governing regulation that the Southampton Housing Authority is providing affordable housing here? In other words, let's say the rates escalate and they could actually obtain more monies and it no longer becomes quote unquote affordable. What's the restriction there?
Well, the funding that
covenants on the property. We covenant the property.
There will definitely be covenants on the property, and the covenants actually come from Suffolk County because of the funding we received for not only acquisition but for the construction.
And so, what's the covenant that guides everybody to feel comfortable that it's affordable housing?
It would have to remain under 80% area median income based on figures that are established by Suffolk, Nassau Suffolk. Rental limits are also established by Nassau Suffolk based on what they consider to be the market rate for affordable housing. So we have to follow those precedents. But we're also but this particular program will be reviewed. It would be audited. It would have to go through inspections on a regular basis. Some people wonder why I do what I do, because we get inspected so many times, and but we do because it provides a community benefit. And I want to lean that towards the council too, with regards to this particular use change. Community benefit is one of those exemptions that most municipalities use as the vehicle to do affordable housing. It's an impossibility to show and demonstrate that what we do shows any form of reasonable return. It's affordable housing.
For you on the need. In other words, you're through the housing authority. You must have a list of people that are looking for apartments or affordable housing.
3,000 names.
How dire is that need?
We have 3,000 names on the waiting list currently.
Okay, so yeah, there's a strong need for these housing units for people that not only have affordable housing, they provide the workforce for the East End.
They work in the community. They travel from West. We've lost a tremendous amount of talent and gift and youth that have to go out to Riverhead and Brookhaven Township. So when people say people are coming from Brookhaven, they're coming back home. They're not coming as foreign residents. They're coming back home because they've not been able to live or find a place that's affordable in this community. It's a hard fight, and taking away one unit is, and I'm going to say, it's a financial hardship too. How do I keep something affordable, not overdevelop it, but at the same time make it reasonable, sensitive, and acceptable to a community? It's very difficult. That's why we decided to do a 2-family with accessory apartment rather than trying doing a 3-family. It would never work.
So, I mean, essentially, there's a median, there's an income qualification to anybody who leases there.
It would have to be each applicant, and we're talking household income, not one individual. So the area median income is based on household income. They even take in consideration adult children who live in the residence, and we're limited to those parameters. Even the head count, HUD has determined how many bedrooms an individual can occupy. So it can't be overcrowded. We've taken the provisions to not do basements on the majority of our homes so that there wouldn't be any temptation to rent out basements. Basements are just used for mechanical purposes, and we make it a conditioned space, but specifically for the mechanicals only.
And then is there a rent cap? I mean, let's say you qualify. What's the rent cap?
But you can't charge more than they can't charge more than the government guidelines, Mark. It's covenanted.
We call it FMAR, fair market rent, which has been established and calculated by the county. Now that does shift and move annually, but it's nowhere near what fair market rent is for Southampton Village. It's such a gap between the two. It is true affordable rental. It's true affordable payments, and for individuals who are in need.
The other thing I do want to add to this is that it's also an opportunity. You know, there's been quite a lot of litigation over the years about the requirement for communities to provide affordable and workforce housing. And this is an opportunity for the Village of Southampton to show that most of a lot of the affordable stuff that's been created in the Village of Southampton has not been on the village's initiation, but
3 units, and I built them.
Yeah.
And that's 3 units. I built them.
So, I mean, you
And-
really
and-
have to think about that, and you should talk to your village attorney about that. And just,
And I would talk to Village of Hempstead. I would talk to Huntington Village. I would talk to all these smaller municipalities that felt that they were exempt from actually taking an effort to create affordable units. It's
they're not. They're not
it's
exempt.
not exactly. It's not a good thing. You don't want the state coming in asking questions, and I hate taking it to that direction because this is not a threat. These are things that
but
have
it's a
happened in
reality.
the past, and it's a reality.
I don't mean it as a threat. I mean it as that's the playing field. Those are the facts. It's they're not threatening. I was just telling you that I think it's an opportunity for the village to take some steps towards something which everyone's directing them.
And I look forward to working with the village on this because I think this has to be a village effort. It cannot be just a housing authority effort, just like we work with the town. It cannot be an individual. It has to be a village effort, and it would be very good stewardship for a municipality as well as this board to say, look, we're going to step out on faith and recognize that the need is there. And we have to do everything in our powers to assist in this. If people ask me why I do this, none of the units that I've ever built, my children personally can never live in. And why? Because there's a conflict of interest. I'm doing it for your children. I'm doing it for the community. So when we see our youth leave and go away to college, and I'm representing my daughter's Villanova shirt right now. I'm very happy and pleased, but she's going to have to find residency on her own. I can't provide it or build it for her under these programs. I'm working through the community, and I really think that I understand what you're saying with regards to the one unit, but that one unit could be the EMT or the EMS worker who just lives on the outskirts of North Sea and can't get here in time for that one particular emergency.
I can tell you that based on what you have explained between how you rent the units, how you run the units, how you make sure the units are upkept, I'm a lot more comfortable with allowing 3 units on that property and based upon the need. More so now than I was before the start of the meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
I would like to ask a question, which is when this was originally at the meeting that I attended where neighbors came to express some concerns about the congestion of parking, both in the neighborhood and around. There were questions about how people would enter and egress from this. And with the amount of people who will be living on this property, there will be a number of cars that will just continue to add to the congestion in that particular area. How has that been addressed over the last number of months?
Well, I think it self-addresses. We have a situation where that particular church currently has no parking. I don't know if you've ever been in that community when there was a funeral service, Bible study, Sunday service, appreciation ceremony. The area is dangerous. You have elderly people walking the street where there's very minimum lighting, going into a parcel with cars rushing up and down the road. We're taking that parking off of the street and putting it in a designated location, properly screened as well as properly lit. The resident who lives on the parcel also could use the parking lot if needed. It's not singularly, will be, if there is a need for individuals to park or add additional parking, we can create additional parking in the parking lot for the residents if that's something that would be reasonable or acceptable of this board, where 2 of the lots that are in the parking lot specific for the house.
But we would work, Curtis, we would work with the
church,
Chicks people, Nelson Pope,
okay,
to make sure that those, any of those issues were mitigated. I will say that one thing that was obvious from the board meetings was that there was no opposition to the use because there are some pre-existing non-conforming multifamily uses there, but we have no problem, of course, with working with Nelson Pope to make sure that any concerns about that are allayed.
And that's the reason why the direction of the traffic into the parking lot, that it would be off the highway and onto the service road. It would not allow the traffic or the flow of traffic go back onto the major road. I wanted all traffic to be specific for the parking lot to be exited from the service road or from the side road.
The neighbor who came to us was concerned about the amount of cars that were also on Plant Street, as well as the church parking lot, but also the situation with VAV, and then the addition of what could be, they imagine, between 3 and 5 cars could be designated for these homes, would perhaps put this at the tipping point. And what I'm hearing tonight is that that's something that hasn't been resolved, but there's a willingness to resolve it. Correct?
Exactly.
Well, I know the resident you're referring to, and I've actually had conversations with him, and will continue to do so. You know, as both a member as well as chair of a board of your village, I have been I've been a huge advocate with the applicant speaking with the neighbors. What was brought to my attention that there was no opposition to the use, but that traffic would be in concern.
Right.
I would most certainly look to work with each and every one of the community, anyone that would have any questions with regards to traffic, as well as any cars that are parked on the site, to ensure that it doesn't look congested, it doesn't look overcrowded. I take great pride in making sure that streetscape, street vista, is one of the things on the board when I was chair that it was important to me. I take that into my job here now as well.
So this parking lot is for the church and for the residents of the house, 3-unit house only. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct.
What prevent, like Plant Street gets a lot of work traffic on it. How do you police that? How do you prevent people other than the church members or the house members from just filling a parking lot?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how do I prevent that from the adjacent commercial sites
That's
that
what I'm
have
saying.
open parking?
Mhm.
So
Parking lot.
Well,
I know that we would, and I know that the church plans to. I don't know if there will be any fence, but chain the parking lot when it's not in use. Now, will a chain stop a car? No, but it would hinder people from occupying it. It would also be marked as private property, so that if anyone is trespassing, that's exactly what they're doing. They're trespassing.
I don't know. I have in my parking lot in my firm, in front of my firm, 2 signs that say that it's parking for my folks only, and it's generally observed. Generally observed. I mean, every once in a while I'll go out and sort of growl at somebody, but that's less and less. But
So during the week, if
I
they
think most people.
put up the signs that should control.
I'm sorry.
It would be.
If they put a chain on Plant Street during the week and had signs, private property, private parking lot, church only, that should control the Plant Street industrial area from creeping into that parking lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Whatever the board wants for that sort of comfort, we're not. You're doing your job when you're making sure that those sort of items are taken care of, and we'll work with you on that. But I guess what I'd sort of like to sense, I know, is whether or not, I think we're going to go back to the drawing board in terms of perhaps combining things into one unit. But I just wanted to make sure that that's something, I'm not trying to. It ain't over till it's over, so to speak. But I don't want to go in that direction if there isn't some just general sense that that's the way we should go. I think it's a good project.
I mean, a straw poll, I would be more in favor of going in that direction.
I mean, John, what I'm saying is I'd like to find a way to say yes. So if the other board members would feel more comfortable with, moving the house closer or combining it with the two-family house, that's wonderful. But, I'm trying to find a way to say yes, and I think we should find a way to say yes.
Okay. Well, Curtis, I think we can look at that. Julie, excuse me, I'm sorry.
It's all right. I think it's very important for us to add affordable housing in the village of Southampton, but I also think I'm very pleased to hear that the parking situation is going to be addressed the concerns that were brought to this board were voiced by one, but I'm sure they represented many. So I am feeling favorably towards it. It's not a feeling, it's the facts are being put together to make it easy to say yes.
Thank you.
Should we look at some redesign, Curtis?
Yeah, and we can do so and ensure that because there's another board I have to go before, which really doesn't favor street-facing garages. So we'll do our best to ensure that whatever design we have, the garage will be properly proportioned and positioned so that it doesn't look too urban.
So I think we have some direction. No, is that fair?
Fair by me.
Okay.
If you could, you guys, we lost Kevin. I'm trying to get him on. I apologize.
Oh. Any questions of me, feel free to call, contact, email. Because after this, I'm sure there are going to be more questions. And as it becomes more real to the community, I'm sure people are going to have questions. Please feel free. I've purposely stepped and not been present during the meetings because we haven't taken possession of the property. So until the church can get their zoning change or get the process going, we really can't do anything. And this happens in my line of business on a regular basis, where we're always waiting for the zoning. So I appreciate you hearing us. I appreciate your open and willingness to hear what we have to say, and I look forward to ribbon cutting where everyone can be present.
So I guess we'll be there at the next meeting, and we thank you for taking a lot of time out of your work session.
Is Kevin back?
I don't think he is. I think it's up to you, Dan.
Yeah, I'm working on it, guys. I'm sorry.
We're at least still a quorum, though.
On a brighter note, it's happy to see everyone without mask.
So only because we're on Zoom in person.
I get it, but I'm walking through Main Street and I don't know whether to say hi or not because I don't know who's before me. The craziest thing. I think the weirdest thing was going to make deposits and putting a mask on going into the bank.
Yeah.
That was very strange.
Yes.
They were at the Bridgehampton National Bank branch next door to me. They were sending everybody, even walking people, into the drive-in, and I was thinking that tube that gets all the handling is probably one of the dirtiest things in town.
Thank you for reminding me. Thank you.
It's like slathering
my hand.
You got to use the phone apps instead. You don't need to go to the bank anymore.
I'm old school.
Now, when you're a nonprofit, you have to have paper trail for everything.
Yeah, I don't believe. I know we're waiting for Kevin. I don't believe we need him to move
You want to
Oh,
go,
okay.
Pass this.
Yeah.
should we
We
move
don't
on
need a
to
quorum. We're not officially voting on anything. It is just a work session. And we still have a quorum,
Yeah.
so.
So you want to move on to 3062, DTB Southampton LC, 70 South Hill Street?
Goodbye, everyone. Take care.
Good day.
Bye-bye, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you both.
David,
Yes.
can you refresh us on that 70 South Hill Street?
Is this still in front of us? I thought this property had transferred ownership since our last meeting.
Yeah, I think Julie's right. I think the correspondence that we received was back in March, and that it's and that the signatory of the letter no longer owns the property.
Oh, I had not received that letter. The last letter that I received was the March 12th packet from Eric Dantes.
You're on 70 South Hill Street, correct?
Right.
That's that little corner house?
It's the house where you all have talked about the pool a lot.
Right, that has a spa that they want to expand to a pool.
And I'm not in favor of that.
Correct.
I mean, it was like tooth and nail just to get the spa. And now they want the pool back again. And the pool, the spa was a compromise to keep them from having a pool.
David, I think if we check with them, they may no longer have an active application.
Okay, I'll try and confirm that before the public meeting.
So you want to move on to Southampton Properties on 72 Gin Lane?
Excuse
that
me.
has-
I'm sorry. I have a Tiffany Scarlato that has her hand up on that last case.
Oh,
She just raised it. And I'm
For-
still
for-
working on it.
for 70 South Hill Street?
I will, Tiffany, is that what you're looking to comment on? If not, lower your hand, please. She is. She wants to talk. So you want me to let her in?
Oh, okay, so we might be
Hang on.
wrong.
Are you able to hear me?
Oh,
Yes,
Kevin,
we can hear you, Kevin. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Tiffany, just hang on 1 minute. We're just trying to fix
Now,
something.
There
Okay,
he
we're
is.
all good. Okay,
oh,
thank you. Tiffany, you need to unmute yourself, or I might need to. Hold up. There we go. You're all set, board.
Tiffany,
Hi,
you're,
everyone. Thank you. I actually represent the new owners of 70 South Main Street, 70 South Hill Street, and we're going to withdraw that application.
okay.
oh,
So no need to deal with it. If you want to, just take it off the agenda, that's fine.
taking it off now.
So, sorry to make you sit around for all that just to
No,
withdraw it.
I actually have something else on here. So
Okay.
it's not just for that, but it's okay. I just happened to hear that and went, oh boy, I should take care of that. Thanks.
All right.
Does that bring us down to South Lane Properties?
Correct.
It's another one that's been hanging around a while.
Hmm.
Do we have anybody that wants to talk to this one?
Are we on 72 Gin Lane? Are you switched to that one now?
Yes.
Huh?
Gin Lane.
I have
It's
hand
John
up.
Bennett. I represent the owner, but not the applicant. I just want the record to reflect my presence here. I don't know if the applicant's here.
Guess not.
And John, I haven't seen any additional submissions from you or from them. So I think it's just a lot of reading for the board members and myself.
House is up, right? The house has been built.
The house is about 80% built now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess there'll be a,
I thought we were sort of all on agreement that we didn't have a problem with the house being rebuilt.
I thought we were too. I have no problem with it. The guy was talking about sight lines and his view, and it was shown that his view was not impaired at all. It's a foolish application, I think.
David, how would we go about closing this one out?
That would have to be done at the public meeting.
Put it up for
We can't do that at the work session. It's still an open public meeting from the last one.
Okay.
So in the meeting, we can just make a motion to deny it, and you want to write up if we're not going to.
I think you got to
Can
give
I
my
ask a question of
adversary another
David?
shot. Dan, I
What's
think,
Yeah, I
that?
think it's a little premature. You have to finish the public hearing and close that out under our standard procedure.
Okay.
that's
so-
David?
I'm sorry.
May I ask a question, please?
Yes, Julia.
David, my understanding was at the last time that this home came up and we had the extensive presentation of materials, that there was a question that was posed by Mr. Deviney at that time about whether or not it could be determined whether or not the other owner, which I think was 114 Gin Lane, was even aggrieved or had the right to bring the questions forward. If they're no longer interested in pursuing it, that's one thing. But I think it became a question about whether or not we were an appropriate venue for the questions to be brought forth. And I frankly, with all of the events that have transpired since, I don't remember how that was resolved. And I don't see any paperwork.
Yeah, we had a lot
about
of
that.
questions, Julia, and my recollection is that one of the questions was, do we have a planning board covenant violation or don't we?
Mhm.
And should we transfer it?
To the planning board, right?
Why is it before us? That's what I recollect from, yes. That
And
it was a question of whether or
the
not
question to the board is, if the board feels that this neighbor has no standing to challenge this, then they can just reject the appeal.
I think we were looking to you, David, to tell us whether or not there was standing. I think that there was all of that testimony about it, and I think that my recollection is we were left with that question, and then almost immediately after Mr. Deviney left the board.
Yeah,
So I just don't remember what happened.
To me, it's almost like you're issuing to us a jury instruction. You know, I mean, I in listening to the arguments, thought to some extent there's a strong argument that they were aggrieved, but I'm not really familiar intimately with the standards, of whether somebody's aggrieved or not. But what I did understand was that it was a planning board covenant that was being breached, and I wasn't understanding why it was before us, rather than them. In other words, why wouldn't it go to them? If there's any doubt or any, confusion about why it's in front of us, isn't it clear that it's a planning board covenant and should be addressed by them?
can I respond to that?
Sure. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I put absolutely on all fours case law in my memorandum that demonstrates that this neighbor who was not part of the subdivision and has absolutely no right whatsoever to raise the covenant. Zero. Also, it's a government covenant which has been interpreted in my client's favor and my client's predecessor's favor in the past at least twice by the village. But Mark, you have a law degree. Everybody may have a claim that something is wrong, but that person has to have the standing to raise the claim. So I ask you please to look at the very, very on all four case law that I put in our memorandum. The next door neighbor, not a lot in the subdivision, never part of the process, not in the chain of title, has absolutely no right to raise the covenant.
But I heard you say that, John, and I agree it could be a very strong argument. I thought I had heard David, our counsel, say that no, in fact, you do not need to be a part of the subdivision in order to claim injury.
Well,
So,
that's just wrong.
But I don't believe he needs to be a part of the subdivision, but he does need a specific injury. He's challenging the building inspector's determination. He does need to show a specific injury caused by that determination, which John has argued has not been shown. The neighbor has provided other evidence, and it's up to the board whether or not to weigh that evidence.
David, his case is based upon the violation of a covenant which he has no standing to raise. I find myself very frustrated because the case law is literally right on point. There was a homeowner out in East Hampton that was trying to raise a covenant, a conservation easement covenant that was imposed by the East Hampton Planning Board. And the court said, you're not in the chain of title, you're not in the subdivision, you have no standing.
Right. His challenge was not of a building inspector's determination. That was and I did mention that at the last meeting, that is not exactly on point. This application that application was different than the current one in front of us.
His entire gravamen of his complaint is based upon a covenant. He's saying that you couldn't have a new building there. What he's forgetting, not only does he not have standing, but there was a new building built there 14 years ago. This is the second new building that he says is not appropriate. I mean, the fact you have to, unfortunately, this is one of those cases where you have to actually read. I'm not being facetious either. You have to read the history of this. You know, he's basing his claim on a covenant that he has no standing to raise. He's basing it based upon an interpretation of a covenant that says twice been made is contrary to the actions of the building department, which, by the way, building departments interpret covenants all the time. All the time.
Mr. Bennett, we're here, and you advocated very effectively for your client at that last meeting. Tonight, this is my understanding of how we're to spend our time is as a work session. I've asked some questions, but I feel as though you're beginning to advocate again, and I'm just trying to sort out where we left it.
I understand.
And I want to make sure that we have actually addressed the questions that we left outstanding, and I don't believe that I still haven't I know your perspective on it, but I don't believe that the question that was left on the table, which is about whether or not they were aggrieved, which is a question I'm directing to David about it, because that's what I'm trying to understand.
I want to say one other thing. I
also need to have a chance to ask questions and in this process, and I feel as though I'm not being given that full opportunity.
I don't understand that.
Well,
the work session is an opportunity for us to ask our counsel specific questions so that we can move forward, with our decision. What our counsel is saying to us, and so we're going to accept his counsel, is that, in fact, not being a member of the subdivision does not preclude him from having standing. You can continue to argue otherwise, but I think what Julia is saying, and I agree, is we're going to follow what our counsel advises us. So let's move on.
Even if the case law is directly contrary to that.
John,
I'd like to have the opportunity to read that and understand that.
Yeah. John, even if this neighbor had standing, I don't agree with his argument.
Well, I mean, that's the other thing, Dan.
Hold on, please. Just if I may. Even if you find that he had standing because he's a member of that, even though he's not a member of the subdivision, he has a right to challenge it. You still need to find that he has an injury, in fact, that's different from the public at large, and he's actually aggrieved by it.
Well, but and I appreciate that guideline. That's what I was referring to as far as a jury instruction. Okay. To me, that's a factual question. Do I find that, his avid representation, contributes to my understanding that he's aggrieved, yes, his view is affected, and that's what people want on an oceanfront property. They want an unobstructed view. Here, his view is being obstructed. That's factual. He can
That's
show.
not factual. That's totally inaccurate.
We saw diagrams last year. His view is not obstructed.
I don't think his view is obstructed.
So let me ask Dan. Let me ask you and Kevin. Why do you think he's making such a big deal about this? Do you think he's just a cantankerous individual?
That's what it seems to be.
He's a serial objector.
Well, John, let us talk. Okay.
I
Sorry.
think
But-
that he is.
What is his reason for presenting, an objection? Do you think it's really unfounded that he is somehow harmed?
I think it's unfounded that he is somehow harmed. I don't think he's harmed at all. His view is obstructed. He's got, 400 feet on the ocean, something like that? His view is not obstructed at all.
His view has been altered.
And we saw diagrams going out at angles, nothing.
His view is.
There's a hedge in a way that the hedge is there, not the house.
Oh, it's way bigger than the hedge, Kevin. Have you gone out to see the property?
House, yeah, it is. It is.
He's complaining
I have to talk.
I think it's the case. I've got mine and screw everybody else.
I have to talk to you about a very recent Second Department case that is determinative, even if you decide somehow this guy has some right to raise these issues. And that's a case out of the village of North Fork where Judge Santarelli dismissed a claim from an adjoining property owner who had an absolute as-of-right area to build. The Zoning Board of Appeals gave him a variance. The next-door neighbor said, "You've obstructed my view," and Judge Santarelli said there's nothing in the local code, and that holds for the village of Southampton as well. There's nothing in the local code that gives you the right to a view, and that can't be the basis for a denial. The Appellate Division Second Department affirmed.
But that's not the issue here, John. The issue here
It's
is
exactly the issue.
No, the issue here is whether he suffered any injury whatsoever by.
You're not hearing what I'm saying. The judges in the appellate division, the judge of the Supreme Court, Suffolk County, said as a matter of law, that is not a legally cognizable damage or injury because there's nothing in the code that gives anyone the right to any sort of unobstructed view. So if you
raising your voice doesn't actually change what we're able to hear.
I'm very frustrated because
I am too.
On all points, on all these points, and you're just saying you don't agree. Well, you have to have a reason not to agree. I'm telling you that
John,
the Second Department has said.
I have to,
excuse me?
I need to talk to David. I need to be able to talk to David.
Why did no one raise anything about the first house that was built there? It was 14 years ago. It sat there 14 years without a word about it.
Now, wasn't the first house lower?
Yes.
I guess it's the second house. There was a house, there was a small house there, and then another house was built, and now there's a third house going up.
Third house is built the same footprint, but now it has to meet the FEMA codes.
So it has to go
higher.
It has to go higher. So they caught between two things. They have to build it higher whether they like it or not.
But Kevin, that's a different issue then.
The FEMA code come along and
I understand, but that's a different issue, Kevin. That's an issue as to whether or not he waived his rights.
What rights?
That he waived his right to object to the breach of a planning board covenant by not objecting the first time. And this is a morass of case law, et cetera, and I just want some clear, questions and answers. If somebody wants to ask me if I think that this person suffers some harm, okay, I'm going to be able to answer, as a board member, yes, I personally believe there's some harm to this applicant.
I don't see what the harm is.
Okay, I understand, and I don't need to necessarily, I think that the obstruction of his view on an oceanfront estate, which is, it's a valuable asset. I think when you take away some of his view.
Not like somebody put up a wall right in front of his house.
I'm sorry?
Not like somebody put up a wall in front of his house. He still has a view of the ocean.
This house is to the west, not to the
His
south.
view, you can argue about how much he's been harmed, okay, that he still has a panoramic view, but some of his view has been obstructed. And so he has a legitimate right to, you know, to claim harm. That's my view. Where that gets him, I don't know. But if you're asking me to decide based upon whether or not he's aggrieved or whether or not, you know, he suffered any harm, I'm going to say yes, he has. That doesn't necessarily mean that he has the right to stop the construction, but I do believe he has harm. And then what happens, and nobody's answered this question, is was the planning board covenant breached or wasn't it?
Right.
According to the village, no. They've allowed houses to be built there. And the planning board has not said a word about it.
But it wasn't put before them, and that's why I was suggesting that you put it before the planning board and let them decide if their covenant was breached or not.
It's not up to me to do that.
It may not be. I'm not saying it was.
I think we're just taking a simple case and just dragging it out too far.
Dan, I'm trying to understand what the issue is for us. Okay,
You
I'm
know
not.
that
I'm not a judge. I'm not evaluating case law. You know, I don't see how we're being put in a position where we have to evaluate a morass of case law and decide what the actual law might be.
Well, the first question is whether or not you feel he has standing to even bring the challenge. And then the second question is whether or not you agree with the building department's interpretation and their decision on the matter.
I think it's time that we moved on. We're stagnant on this issue, and it's not going to be decided right now anyway. You heard John's viewpoint.
But we've been talking about it, Kevin, since February.
I know.
And this is that's the first time it came up. We listened to about 90 minutes of arguments, but this is the first opportunity we've had to actually discuss it. And some of the questions that are coming up, have been outstanding all that time just because of the circumstances that we're living through.
I agree with that.
I mean, it may feel ponderous, but I think the core question was, should this have been brought to us? I don't think that's resolved. And whether or not they're standing, and I think those are the pieces that we need to have that are worth us hearing through,
Just
rather than just the value of the properties.
I'm sorry. Just one last comment, if I may. Your special counsel defending you in the Supreme Court on the request of the next door neighbor for a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction, your own lawyer has said that in a cross motion to dismiss, which we both made, I made, and your own lawyer made, has said that there's no standing, there's no agreement. So I suggest I put those papers before you, so you should read those as well.
All right. We'll move on to the next one, unless we have more questions on this. Anybody have any more questions? Maybe you want to add something, David?
No.
Okay.
Now we're to new cases.
What's before?
No, we're 145 Cooper Farm Road is next, right?
45 Cooper's Farm Road.
That's actually a new case.
Yeah, I remember seeing that before.
They just have it in the wrong place. So on the worksheet, it's listed as a new, I think, as a new
Right,
case.
it's on the notice.
On the case that I have, on the worksheet I have, it's on the pending cases.
I don't think we've heard it yet, though.
So either.
It's on the notice for new cases.
Yeah, here it is. You want to put an addition of 474 square feet to a dwelling for a total floor area of 4,509 square feet, for 4,085 square feet is the maximum permitted. So we have another case where they want to go over the zoning.
Kevin, if I could just interrupt for a minute.
Sure.
The last case under new cases is the only new wetland case.
Uh-huh.
from reviewing the file, it looks like it's just a revegetation plan.
Right.
So I plan to review that prior to the meeting and have any comments ready for next week's meeting.
Okay.
And
It looks like they want to do a lot of work on that property, though.
it does. I'll keep that in mind. And as I said, I want to make sure that I look at that landscape plan carefully. So I will come back with that. I didn't know how much we're going to discuss new cases, but
You don't usually discuss them too much until after we've seen them, right?
exactly. So if it's okay, there's really nothing further on my end. I'd like to sign off, Kevin.
All right, John. All right, Chip.
You know, for the sake of efficiency. For the sake of efficiency. Very nice to see everyone.
All right, bye, Chick.
Take care. See you next week.
So Kevin, on this 145 Cooper's Farm Road, I guess we just got to see what kind of great argument they have to why they need this 500 more feet.
Right, right. Who's their attorney?
You want to move on to Osborne Avenue?
Yeah. That's a builder error on the swimming pool.
Yeah, it's like 16 inches.
And it looks like, Dan, it looks like if they had just put it at the right angle, it would have fit.
Right.
They put it on the wrong, because he had 20 feet on each side.
Right.
It's just he kind of,
We've had a lot of trouble over the years with pool companies that don't get a proper survey done.
We have. But they're really not asking for a lot here.
I don't know if I would make a big deal out of this for 16 inches.
Right? What's the remedy? Tear the pool out?
Yeah, I know. It's just, I can't see it for 16 inches. I think you just reprimand the pool company and give them the variance.
Company, yeah. Send them a letter, and, you know.
Yeah.
Okay. What's Sabonic Realty? That's on County Road 13. That's a parking. Go into the setback.
The parking? I mean, that's right on County Road 39.
Right. Right.
Is that the pest control building?
Is it the pest control building?
I don't know. It says it's about Sabonic Realty, but if it looks, from when I looked at the map, I couldn't quite tell where that.
I couldn't figure it out either from the map. I'll have to go look and see where it is. It could be the pest control building. Or it could be the laundry. We'll have to look at it.
Yeah.
That is, PLC Hillside is back to us, 132 South Main Street. That's the barn, isn't it?
That's not the one we got the letter from the ARB, is it?
Yes.
Where they want us
They don't want the barn.
to put the barn where we want them to put it. They want us. They want to so they'll have to show us that new location that the ARB is recommending.
I have somebody to speak on this application, Tiffany
Okay.
Scarlato.
Bring them on.
Okay, Tiffany, in a second you'll be in. And if you want to turn your video on, that would be great. Okay, you're all set.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Tiffany Scarlato, 41 Meeting House Lane, Burke and Sullivan, for the applicant. I think you all have a survey that indicates the proposed location of the carriage house. And I believe you all also have a comparison diagram showing where it originally sat, which was in the middle of the flag lot, where you approved it 21 feet away from the property line, and where the ARB has requested 5 feet away on the property line. And I believe you do have a letter from the ARB in support of the application.
Except they want the barn to stay the same orientation.
Exactly.
They
They
want
were
to
concerned about the spatial orientation between the building and the garage itself and the orientation of the building. It was the original orientation of the building was as they have requested it be now. We had swung it around and requested a 21-foot variance. The ARB requested we bring it back around so that it's parallel with the street and request the 5-foot variance.
Do they
Again,
want to move it back farther on the property too?
they asked that we move it a little bit farther back on the property. You know, I think their letter explains why they did that. They wanted us to push it a little farther back so that it was not a prominent part of what you see from the streetscape. As it, you know, from a historic perspective, that's not what you would traditionally see from the streetscape. So they wanted to bring it back a little bit so as to maintain its original orientation and see as little of it as possible from the street.
Tiffany, can I ask you, do you have the right to demolish it?
We do. We do have it. It is not considered a historic structure. We went through this with the Architectural Review Board. Although it is historic in its in its current location, it's historic. And I think everyone understands that we have to move it. It was completely demolished and rebuilt in the 80s. So at this point, we do have the right to demolish it and rebuild it. It's not a historic building.
So I'm not following exactly. It's not a question for you, Tiffany. It's maybe a question for the other board members and you know, David. Why are they weighing in on this, the ARB? It's not
they approved they still approved the visual of the structure.
But
still
that's
getting
not the
approval.
location, that's the appearance. In other words, if you're allowed to demolish it, why are they weighing in on where it's located?
From the letter, did you read the letter? They're saying that
No, you're not getting a chance to read the letter.
it was rebuilt in the original historical appearance of the original historical building. So even though it's not historical, they built it so it looks historical. So they're trying to preserve a similitude of the original historical building.
Who's barking? Not one of mine. They're all quiet tonight. Yeah. Now, originally they were going to separate those lots. Has that been accomplished? The flag lot has been turned off from the main lot?
Yes, we're in the process. We're at the health department and in front of the planning board awaiting health department approval for the lot line modification.
All right. So the barn has to be moved so it's not overlapping the boundary.
Exactly. Currently it exists over what will eventually be a lot line, over the flag lot. So it exists in the driveway back to the lot in the rear.
So the thing between us and the ARB is, do we want it to be east-west or do we want it to be north-south?
But what I'm missing a step because I thought we already ruled on this as a board.
We did.
And somebody correct me where I might be wrong if I'm wrong. What the ARB might be saying is we want to weigh in not only on the appearance of the barn, which is fine with us, but that although you as the Zoning Board of Appeals said that you wanted to move it further from the property line and comply with dimensional requirements, we want to advocate that you grant a variance so that the barn can be seen from the road, that there's some type of historic setting, and that we should thereby grant a variance for the dimensional requirements. It's not making a lot of sense to me.
It didn't make a lot of sense to me either.
Well, I have to say, I don't think it made a whole lot of sense to us either. We would have rather put the barn exactly where it had originally been proposed and where we received the variance from this board for it. However, the ARB did not feel that way and were quite insistent that they would not approve the barn in that particular orientation in that location.
But that's what I'm missing.
And sent us packing back to you. So here we are.
Maybe you can weigh in. I just don't know how they have that jurisdiction.
Well, they have the authority to review applications for all structures.
Yes,
that
Can-
structure.
with
Can
respect
they
to the-
overrule our
What they
board?
look like, but not where they are.
No, I mean, they can't make you accept what they want.
well, I don't want to put the applicant, in a, some type of, odd position because, they don't know what the two boards want them to do. But I understand that the Architectural Review Board can certainly comment on the appearance of this barn, but if it's not historic, if it could be knocked down, then we should perhaps be the board that decides that the location should not violate dimensional requirements.
I agree with that.
Yes.
Then that's a discussion we'll have with the ARB's council and try and get everybody on the same page.
I agree. I agree, David. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I just,
But they do have, the overall aesthetic, the relationship with the other buildings, that is something that falls under their purview. But yeah, you are 100% correct that the location to the side yards is within yours.
If I recall, we turned down the pool house, did we?
Correct.
Yes, that's not part of this application
I
any
know.
longer.
I mean, it sounds like the applicant would prefer to move it where it was decided that they could based upon the meeting before the Zoning Board of Appeals.
They want to turn it 90 degrees.
Absolutely. We developed an entire site plan and brought that before the Architectural Review Board, who, as I said, was fairly adamant that they would rather have it oriented in its historic orientation and slightly farther back, just because of the new jog in the proposed property lot lines.
And I'll speak with their council to see if they agree with Mrs. Scarlato that they could just demolish this by right. I don't know if that's the case. I'll have to confirm with the building department and with the ARB's council.
And perhaps, I think that's probably a good idea, David, for us to get that determination. That way, it becomes very solid in front of the ARB where we go with this next.
Okay. Do we have anything else?
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. 315 narrow lane, that's been around a while too, isn't it? Yeah.
I have an applicant, I have somebody here to speak regarding the application. Robert Kelly.
Okay.
Okay, Robert. I don't see you yet. One sec. Okay, Robert, I need you to unmute and turn your video on.
Hello?
Your video as well, please, Mr. Kelly.
Well, I got to figure out how to do that. Hold on a second.
Yeah, I requested it. Ms.
Thank
Zaha.
you.
There you go. All set.
Okay, although I do a lot of zoning in the village of Quogue and sometimes in the town of Southampton, I've never been to a zoning board work session before. So shut up and not say anything. Let me know. But it's a pretty simple application. My client has gotten elderly and needs to put an elevator in so he can reach the master suite on the second floor of his house. It's a very small 6x6 foot elevator that would be added on the back left corner of the house, the southwest corner. And it would create a need for a 6 foot total side yard variance, although it would still obey the single side yards, and it has 39.9 cubic feet above the sky plane. As well underneath the lot coverage. He's permitted 7,100 square feet there, and he only has 5,150 before adding this 36 square foot elevator shaft. Actually, I think the elevator shaft ends up being smaller than the chimney it's next to, but the chimney is allowed to pierce the sky plane.
Do you have any plans of the house? I mean, that is the only
Did
place.
attach them to the applications. Yeah,
I mean,
I did not give you entire plans, but I gave you the architect had done that end of the house. So it should be attached right behind the survey in each application package.
I was just curious if there they picked that spot and they need a variance, was there any other spot that they would have been able to put this where they wouldn't need a variance?
Well, that's the end where the, that's the end where the master bedroom is, upstairs. And he's not terribly mobile, so he was looking to be able to go straight up into that. And it would be coming from the living room, which is below it. I'd also point out that this is very well screened, this property. If you look at I submitted an aerial as well, and you could also go on this town GIS and see that. It's well treed, screened from the neighbors. I don't think I wouldn't think it would pose any problem for any of them, but I have not heard from any of those neighbors.
We did get a letter of complaint of some sort.
We do have one letter, I think, right? Don't we, Mark?
Yes, I did see one letter of complaint.
Can I request that a copy get sent to me, or do I need to go down to Village Hall and spoil that?
To Paul, I think.
I don't have a copy of the complaint letter.
It's an email
Uh-huh. I don't have it.
from, okay.
It is from,
It's an email that actually has Diane's name at the top of it.
from Jan DeHar, who's on the Wickapog address to the south.
And it's got what looks like the floor plan of the residence as the body of like on the paper.
I'm looking.
Oh.
Is it
They even
possible
had a
just share what the
suggestion-
concern is?
Yeah, they have a suggestion as to where you can put the elevator, Robert. It's worth looking at.
Hopefully that's not an anatomical suggestion.
No,
No, I know, it sounded as I said it.
We'll wait for the public hearing for that.
Okay.
No, it looks
I'm
like
sorry,
they were just shifting it in to another location in the living room and having it land in another location in another part of the master bedroom, so as to be further away from their house.
I think if you look at the survey, you realize it couldn't move much because, that it's not quite square, that end of the house to the property line, but it's.
I think that you should also then show that in a conforming location, and if it's in that conforming location and it doesn't work architecturally or whatever, you have a strong argument why it shouldn't be in a conforming location.
Yeah.
Just because it doesn't end up right in the bedroom, but it might end up in the hallway to the bedroom, it still works. It's unless the layout blocks it.
Robert, right, just taking a quick look, it might be that she's asking to put it where the condensers are located.
Yeah, I haven't seen, can someone send me that or?
Sure.
Just getting a partial floor plan, first and second. So it's going to open up into the master bedroom.
I'm sorry, I can't quite hear you.
Or it's going to open up into the master bedroom, correct?
Yes, correct.
Which is one of the things that they want,
Yes.
rather than be on the other side of the house.
And they're doing this for accessibility purposes, correct?
Yeah, he's well into his 80s now, and he has to go up the stairs. He has to have somebody physically help him up, and it's difficult for him.
Of course, that brings up the question that the variance goes with the property, not with the owner.
True. On the other hand, I don't think it's much of an ask. We still obey the single side yard setback. This neighbor to the south with the complaint, 20 feet is code. Had this house been turned differently, the entire house could be 20 feet away. This elevator shaft would still end up at like 21.4, I think it is on the survey, away. So total side yard, in my mind, works more towards not having a neighborhood that looks crowded because you have wall-to-wall houses. Single side yard setbacks are what protect an individual neighbor. And this neighbor's complaint is
So it
really
complies
about.
with the single side yard setback, just not the aggregate.
Correct.
Right. All right, we'll have to look at it.
Yeah, it looks like there's a window well shown on the survey, I believe in the area that they're proposing, that the neighbor proposes to move the elevator.
Yeah,
It looks like there's a window well there. That's right on the other side of that chimney. Where the AC units are, that's right by the chimney for the den. So I assume that must be a, below grade window well that's shown on the survey.
I think you're correct. But I don't have the layout of exactly where they would like us to put the elevator.
Okay, yeah, if you can you can send me an email, or you can contact the Village Hall, and Diane Greger, who's the zoning board secretary, can forward that to you.
That'd be great. Thank you. I'll do that tomorrow. Not tomorrow. My 30th wedding anniversary tomorrow. I'll do that Thursday.
Congratulations.
I made it this far.
She hasn't killed you yet.
I thought you were supposed to get parole at some point, but
There is no parole. I got a lot of years on you.
Okay, is there any other information that you feel you would like me to provide come public hearing time?
Anything else we need?
No, it's just what Dan was suggesting. Is there an alternate place that might be less intrusive to the neighbor to the south on Wicker Park? We just have to look at alternatives.
Yeah, I understand.
You have anything,
Okay,
Joe?
so
Anything else?
I'm good for now, and I'll see you at the regular hearing.
Very good.
Thank you. Have a nice evening, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
And the last case we've turned over to Dick, and he's going to have something for the meeting, so no sense in going into that, right? Do we have anything else that's to come before us?
No, I think we're done. That's it.
I think so too.
And
Can I ask everyone a question before we conclude? Is that all right? Mark, did I just interrupt you? I'm
No,
sorry.
go ahead. I'll follow.
I value very much the work session opportunity, and I appreciate that we're trying to make this work in different circumstances. But I do find it difficult that I feel as though we're going to be hearing cases twice in this process while we're doing this remotely. When I previously found the work sessions where we could all dialogue with each other, they were easier to manage. And tonight I'm finding it's complicated with all these people stepping in. Have we ever done it where there's a time limit of how long anyone who wants to make a presentation can go in a work session?
Town does that, but we've never done that. We never had a reason to do it. We have cut some people off when they started to repeat themselves for the month before. Aside from that, we've always let people speak.
Well, we have at the work sessions. Yeah, because I'm
talking about the regular session.
No,
Right, the regular session, of course.
I was going to say something along the lines of what Julia was saying. I remember the work sessions being more of an opportunity for us as board members to hear each other's views.
And I think we'll go back to that when we get back to the regular format.
But I think that could be a long time from now, Kevin. I don't think that's tomorrow.
No, August, September.
6 months, more than that.
I would be happy to tell you about the attendee after you guys discuss it, and if you want to hear it, maybe that would help. Because I do have control over when I let somebody in, if that would help.
And if the board wants, you guys can adopt time limits. That's entirely up to the board.
At prior work sessions, I mean, I remember, I don't remember advocates, presenting. If we had questions, we could ask them questions, but they weren't presenting. They weren't making, their arguments. They weren't.
Right. We never had the back and forth at a work session like we seem to be progressing towards that now.
With this format, I think when we get back to the regular sessions.
Is there a way that we could do a meeting at the, like set up chairs in a big circle so that we can be all like 8-10 feet apart and have a have a meeting where we actually meet.
Even still, it does have to be posted, right, though, David? Because we're going through,
Yes.
yeah.
Well,
So
I mean, my question is, David, do applicants have the right to speak at the work session?
No. This board has historically allowed them to. Generally, it's been much briefer than, unfortunately, I believe the work sessions have involved some, and the applications are pretty intense. So the board, I think, is given a little more leeway than they would have for a standard application, which is only, a few minutes.
There was a
But in a
time
work session,
when we didn't even let them in the room.
yeah, a work session, they're allowed to observe, but you're not required.
A couple of years ago, we loosened up a bit because they told us to loosen up. We used to meet upstairs. We never met downstairs.
Right, and then the open meetings laws require them to be, publicly viewable and whatnot, but there is no requirement that you allow them to speak or that you allow them to speak for an unlimited time.
Well, I'm not against.
Or not let them
not
speak
against-
at all.
Yeah, exactly. I want to hear what Dan, Julia, and Kevin have to say about applications at this point in a work session. That's my goal in a work session. I'll listen to
Us to be there, and maybe if we want somebody to speak because we have a question, have them come in. Have them get on Zoom with us.
So I can ask at the end, guys, if that's what you'd like me to do, is I'll let you speak and then say, such and such is here with their hand up. Would you like to let them speak? And
So
then,
Antoinette, are people listening as we're talking?
Yes,
So
I
they're
can
able to
check
hear
that.
the entire presentation. So they're waiting, so they're formulating their comments while we're speaking.
Yes, also you are live right now too, so I can shut that off if you'd like. Want me to shut it down?
We have to
I don't know if
No,
you can or you can't.
we're allowed to have this discussion.
Whatever you tell me.
It's all
I
right.
think, frankly, I'd like us to be able, I have found the sorting out of the issues amongst the board with David and Chick has been very helpful. And I'm finding the advocating that is going on. And I recognize the format is different. It's a distraction from our ability to get to the questions because, I can talk about this issue on Gin Lane. I had some questions. I still have them. And we're going to go to the meeting again. We're going to hear the whole thing again. And the questions I was trying to get out tonight, I don't think they're not resolved for me. So I'm going to have to either wait or try to reach out to David separately. So that's the frustration of this format. And I want to be able to misspeak or ask a question and not be, have somebody raise their voice or just try to get their point heard. I want to be able to have the format to be able to ask questions, and I'm finding that difficult.
Well, I don't want to get into personalities here, but
I'm not either. I just want to have that opportunity.
I mean,
and I think it's only right.
John seems to have every other case that we have, and John does have a habit of being very verbal. We've always lived with that,
Do you feel that you had a chance to ask your question tonight and you just didn't get the
I
answer?
feel as though if the questions that I've asked are not the questions that are being appreciated, that they're not being answered. And I have thought that since our February meeting. And telling me that I'm wrong or that doesn't actually, or not answering it, it doesn't actually get us to the next place. And in part, I'm also slowing down the process now because I keep asking the same questions because I'm not able to get, I don't feel as though I've been able to get the answers.
Where do you want to get the answers from?
I asked David a question tonight. He wasn't able to answer it, or it becomes a different point, or that the question is not appropriate. I want to understand that.
What was the question?
And we don't have to belabor the point, but the format has some frustrations in it. And I think some way to make it so that we're actually able, as Mark was indicating, so that we can talk amongst ourselves a little more readily. I'd appreciate it. I mean, Dan, you've been able to provide short and longer answers over these months that have been very helpful. And we're not able to have that dialogue in this setting.
I don't know.
But these concerns started before we were here.
Cases tonight. We got 3 cases off the agenda that we made decisions on. You know. So actually tonight was really a work session and a regular session because we made
Exactly.
It was both. So
Well, that's up to the, you know, I appreciate Julia's position. And I think it's harder, usually you know, sitting in person, you guys would have your discussion first before the applicant was able to chime in. And I think it's probably also a little easier to butt in on video than in person, in an in-person discussion. So if that's the procedure the board would like to follow, to have, you know, your discussion followed then by possible interaction with the applicant or objectors, then, you know, that's all up to the board and something that can be done.
as I said, I think part of the problem is it's not really just a work session. It's also a work session and a regular session because we're making decisions. So we're making decisions, it becomes a public session and they can say what they want. They can chime in.
Well, if we're, the decisions, those public hearings are closed for those decisions. You know, so there's no ability, there's no right for them to weigh in on those. This has been the board's practice to allow on any work session. I used to appear every once in a while as an objector to the work sessions and was generally allowed a few minutes to speak, but it was generally after the board had their limited discussion on, you know, first time on, or, you know, a more intense discussion after it had already been at a public hearing.
But we've never made official decisions before at a work session. So this is not, as I said, this is not strictly a work session, it's both.
Yeah, we voted on cases. We've never done that at a work session before.
At a work session before, we've told our attorney what we want, but we've never voted on his decision. Now we're voting on those decisions. So it's a public meeting now, not just a work session. If it's a public meeting and we're making decisions, the public has a right to say something.
Right. The
Let's not
public
make
meetings,
decisions
though,
at the work session.
Kevin, the public meetings are for the advertised, noticed applications. The board can adopt. This is a televised. It can be watched video for you adopting those other resolutions. But when it comes to a public meeting that the neighbors and applicant are invited to discuss and weigh in on, that is the continued public hearings, not the matters that have been closed that you're issuing decisions on.
We always make
get that.
a public meeting, never at the work session. So we made 3 decisions tonight. My mind,
I think what David says is that we can do it at a work session. It's not, you know, we've always done it at the public meeting, but it's okay to do it at a work session. Is that what you're saying, David? That part of it?
Correct. Correct.
as I've
Mark, where are you in this?
already said 3 times, to me, this is not just a work session, it's both. It's a public meeting and a work session.
Okay, I just, you know, Antoinette can control it. I need an opportunity where I am, and I'll probably echo what Julia was saying. I just need a time where we can talk. David, you, Dan, I want to hear what Kevin has to say. I want to hear what Julia has to say without any interruptions. And I want a full opportunity to have dialogue with each of you without anybody else interrupting. And I'm not finding that. And I'm not as a result, you know, feeling as if we have the right
That's because
process.
of the format. You know, if we were seated at the table in Village Hall, it wouldn't be like this. It would be different.
Well, yeah, but maybe we just don't let people interject until we have a full opportunity. And if we have a question, sure, we can ask a question, a specific question. But right now we have questions to ask each other, not the advocates.
And the next time we meet, we can call it a work session only if that's what we want to do. We can do that.
Sure.
Well, I think we're whether or not it's a work session or not. When it's a work session, the public doesn't have the authority to speak. You don't have to give them that opportunity, and you can set your rules for the work session however you would like. It's when it comes to the public meeting for the scheduled ones, then yes, those people are allowed to speak and are given that ability. But you can set your rules for the board having their discussion first in a work session prior to the applicant getting to weigh in at all.
So what you're saying, David, is that we could present, a case could be like tonight, we could have had the case, we could have had our discussion, as when we coalesced around something, Kevin could invite whoever was there instead of maybe what we've been doing, which is we know what the case is. Because I'm understanding it, Antoinette, that people can hear the whole discussion, whether or not they're speaking and joining in at the same time.
Yes, but I don't need to let them in until you tell me to. Their hand goes up and I see a hand, and I happily will just not ignore the hand until you guys are done speaking, and then I would allow them in. It actually is more control than in a boardroom, because John Bennett can't talk until then, or another person can't talk until then. So then you guys would have the floor.
I think that probably on this work session evenings would probably work better for I just think that we might be slightly more efficient, but also with that, whatever the questions were at the outset of the meeting in terms of the format, whether or not it's a webinar or it's whatever those questions were at the outset, that's something that you'll resolve for us, correct?
Julie, so I have like a couple of things going on I know you can't see. So Julie Fitzgerald says that what we're doing is legal. And what happened was I didn't flip him. We had problems. Julie couldn't hear me. So we went on actually at 5:20 and it became a problem. In the end, it was her microphone that was causing the problem. It wasn't until David came on that we realized that was what was going on. But I didn't switch it. So it's not a problem anymore. I switch him over to the panelist. His video's on and his video's on and his speaker's on. And Julie said she will talk to John Bennett tomorrow.
So, and in terms of the other members of the board and David and Chick, if he were here, is everybody comfortable with the idea that if we have the discussion and then we could invite people in so that we're not just adding another person into the dialogue for the whole, at each topic?
Are we going to review it on a case-by-case basis or at the end after we've already discussed all the cases?
I think case by case is probably I think it would be only
don't forget,
polite to the people who would come for that.
We haven't met in almost 2 months. And we've only had 2 meetings. People are getting anxious out there to get before us and speak their minds. That's part of the problem here. I mean, John Bennett is getting very anxious to be before us and to speak. And
but Kevin, this didn't start just tonight. I mean, this happened also while we were meeting live and in person. It's just we've taken the time and we're talking it out. I think this format has made it much clearer, though.
All right. Okay.
I mean, I've been actually myself anxious how many cases would be before us, but I gather that the volume is not as high as you might imagine after all this time.
Well, I talked with the building department and they said they have a backlog of cases, but they don't want to give us more than 6 new cases at a time. But she has other applications that are ready to be put on our agenda.
Oh, I want to know what that number is.
I want to know how many cases there are. She'll tell you, I guess. She didn't give me the number, but she said she has a backlog of cases waiting to get on, you know.
I certainly, because I've asked that question several times of the building department in these last couple of weeks because I've been anxious about it, but.
Yeah, she didn't give me a number, but she said she has more cases that.
Oh yeah, let's find out. Let's put it on the table and find out.
Yeah.
Well, if they gave us all the cases at once, we'd be around till 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
I don't think we want to go back to those days again.
Yeah.
Just so you know, Julie just texted me and said to let you guys know that she confirmed with the village attorney that a webinar is perfectly legal and meets the governor's requirements. So you guys are all good.
Yeah, I
Thanks.
don't understand John's point of that at all. You know,
I didn't either. I think it was because he wasn't on video or audio at that.
that was just,
moment, so. But yeah, I just want to be clear that while the meetings have to be open to the public, that doesn't make them public hearings when the public is allowed to speak. So it's well within your rights to say no speaking 5 minutes or at the end of our discussion when it comes to a work session.
and are we going to have
Yeah,
a vote hearing?
hey,
We're
David,
going to have a public meeting.
That is next week. That's the 25th.
We're going to have it next week
Yes,
on Zoom.
correct.
Yes.
All right.
yeah,
Because after the April meeting, we didn't have anything until now.
yeah.
We never had a public meeting, so to speak.
No, because that had to be fully noticed with the 10 days and coordinated. So
So when we
David,
time
we
meet,
have a,
they can say what they want.
yes,
Okay.
David,
yes.
we have a history with John Bennett of him telling us what we can do or not do. So, like we talked about that webinar or the things, that's John Bennett being John Bennett.
Right.
So in the past, he would have come out and said, the boy, you can't do that. We'll say,
No, I understand that.
We can do what we do.
The meetings have been, this procedure for them has been discussed between myself, Alexandra, the village attorney before they were all set up. So I wasn't too concerned with his claims there. So I understand that.
You can't let John get under your skin. You just got to ride with it, and if necessary, you shut him off, but you can't let him bother you.
My concern is really about how our ability to be able to have our discussion. Now, I think we've talked it all through this evening.
Just make a suggestion that if that is how you are going to proceed, Kevin, if you say it at the beginning of the meeting, then the attendees at least don't think I'm ignoring them and start texting me while I'm trying to take minutes.
That won't be next week. Next week is a public meeting. Right?
Even with the public meeting, if you announce that, because Jolie will be on, their hand will be up, they might think they're being ignored. You might want to just say, we'll see you, we will get to you, just so they understand how, I don't know.
All right.
It's not just a suggestion, David, please correct me if I'm wrong, but they might start texting or calling the village and asking Julie what's going on. But really, in fact, we're just waiting, Okay.
Right. And everybody that received the notice, they have to, sign up to be speakers beforehand. So you should have a list and know what applications they're there on. And then, like you said, it's a public meeting, so it's not the same discussion. It's more letting the applicant go, and then the neighbors, without the board really getting in depth in your discussion of the matter.
Right.
But yeah, when it comes to that meeting, Antoinette has been, you were great at the last and the one in April, letting in the people that we knew were there for those applications. So
yeah,
I don't see an issue with that.
We had a list tonight, David, but we didn't know which application went with what. That's why I said that at the beginning. So I feel
okay, so when they registered, they didn't say which application they were registering for?
No, so I don't know until they raise their hand, which is fine.
Okay.
But if Kevin were to say, we will get to you, raise your hand if you're a representative, we'll let them in right away. And in a work session, if it's just announced, we hear you, but you just have to be patient with us. We're going to have our discussion, and then we will allow you in if we feel fit. Then they at least know, and then they're not calling the village and sending emails and sending chats. And I just see it becoming problematic if it's not explained. That's all.
Well, they're frustrated too, because
Yeah, I understood. Yeah, absolutely.
they're not used to this format. They're used to coming to a meeting and standing up and seeing people in front of them. We just have to get through this, which we will. We'll get through.
Perfect. Just let me know. So I'm proceeding that way, you guys, from here in. I'm going to wait for you to tell. Okay, no problem.
Well, the public meeting, they'll be speaking on a case-by-case basis.
The public meeting, you guys are going to let in the applicant first, and then the public hearing after you guys hear the case. Because I'm going to relay this to Jolie.
Like, is there any questions from the floor?
Okay, perfect.
Like that. We'll do that. We'll run it just the way we run the public meetings.
No problem.
Do we have anything else?
No, I'm good. See you next week.
I guess,
Have a great week, guys.
need a motion here?
All right, thank you, everybody.
Hold on.
Okay.
Bye.
Motion to close or no?
Meeting is closed.
Okay.
The June work session of the South Hampton Village Zoning Appeals is closed. Okay. to
Good
see-
night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hey.